Welcome back into the studio. I wanted to show you how easy it is to use PanPastels to do a very quick, simple tonal underdrawing. Now, I shot this video quite a couple of years ago, so I've changed my technique very slightly, so I'll tell you about that as well. But basically, I've transferred my drawing onto pastelmat paper, and I'm also showing you here why I use toned paper, so a mid-tone paper, whether that's brown or grey, my usual favourite papers, why I use that more often than not. Okay, so I'm just going in here using PanPastels and one of the tools. You can see you can just apply the pastel to it on the edge if you want finer areas, or over the whole of the base if you want to cover larger areas more quickly. But for those that don't know, PanPastel is basically just pastel pigment compressed in these circular cake pans. Okay, so the mid-tone paper, this is the critical part, is acting as the middle tone for the whole of the drawing. That means I don't have to put in a mid-tone with the PanPastel or with any pastel. I can just concentrate on two things: the darks, which I'm doing now, and the lights, which I'll do at the end. Now the tonal range, the lightest light to the darkest dark, that's what most beginners get wrong in their artwork. They concern themselves about details, even at the beginner stage like this, and they find that when they're 3/4 the way through the drawing, they've got all these details in, but the drawing looks very flat. And that's because they haven't got the tonal range done underneath. So by doing an underlayer similar to this, now you could go in with more colors as I show in my other videos, but black and white is, you know, that's a great way to center your interest on what you should be thinking about. By doing this at an early stage, it allows you to, you know, really get the basics in place. Now you can see my finished drawing on the right hand side. It looks extremely complicated. You need to break it down into simple steps, which I show, you know, on all my Patreon videos in depth, and also on videos here on YouTube. You need to really break it down into manageable parts. The tonal underlayer is the first really of those manageable parts. You can just forget about the colors, think about where the lights and the darks are going to live. And as I said, this is me doing a new voiceover over an older part of a video, but I like to show how this just two color tonal under drawing, how simple it can be, because on some of my newer videos I'm showing more in-depth ways of using PanPastels as an underlayer. Okay, so this is the simplest way of doing it. So that's the darks all done. Now if you're a type of person that has got a habit of putting too much pastel down, use some kitchen tissue and just lightly wipe over the surface. We're creating more of a ghostly image now, and that's great for us. What it's doing is removing any excess pastel that you've got on that surface. Okay, so you don't need to do this if you use a light application, but if you're sometimes really heavy handed, that'll get rid of the excess. PastelMat paper holds onto the pastel really well, so you can see it didn't just smudge away. Now if you're using a paper without the tooth, it will just smudge off. Okay, so that's the darks done. Remember, the paper is the mid-tones, and I'm going to use a really light fleshy color, almost white, to put the highlight on. And I can just clean off the PanPastel tool by gently wiping it on some kitchen tissue. Okay, so it still looks black, but you can see there's virtually nothing actually coming off of it now. So I can just dip it into the surface of the pan. I could then wipe it if I wanted to on some regular printer paper. That can take a bit of the excess off, or just go on as I'm doing now. So you can see now all I'm concentrating on is where the highlights are going to be. The paper is the mid-tone. Black I've done already for my darks, and now I'm just looking for the lightest lights. And a tonal underlayer really doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. You don't need to make things more difficult than they need to be. And in lots of my videos, I really try to break it down into simple, manageable pieces. So that's why many of my members and people that have took my lessons in the past are quite surprised with what they've achieved. It's not that they couldn't do it before, it's basically because they was getting overwhelmed by looking at what they wanted the finished product to be, and they didn't know the stages to get to that end stage, hence being confused by details too early on. And you can see how I could use just a very light touch if I wanted to, and just put a little bit of pastel down if I wanted to make this even more of a thorough underlayer, so to speak. So I can look at, you see I can just use little tiny touches, and then I've just jumped and shown you what I've done by continuing that just for a couple of minutes, and once again I can go over it with some kitchen tissue just to take away any excess pastel that's on the surface. So that's a really quick way of doing a nice little tonal underlayer. Then I can go on top of this with all of my accurate colors and accurate tones, and then finally the details on top. Hope you found that video useful. Just wanted to quickly mention my Patreon channel for those looking for even more in-depth art instruction. It's packed full of pastel videos, oil videos as well, and those videos are being added to new ones every single month. I have videos for the complete beginner that have never done pastels or oils before with just limited supplies, and I take you from the very first blocking in all the way through to the final detailed drawings and paintings. I've also got some really unusual subjects as well, and in all of my videos I always take you through all the details. You see everything I do, how I create my work. But it's not just for beginners, it's also for novices, and I also show the best artwork that I've ever done as well. And this particular elephant video spans 6 hours, so you know you're going to see tons and tons of details, tips and techniques. And as mentioned, I've got lots of oil videos on there too, so there really is something for everybody, and you get access to hundreds of hours worth of videos for just $4. Now over 1,000 members strong. Hope to see you there soon.